This goes back to around 2022. I, 14-year-old female, was a Valorant addict and would play for hours. I wouldn't normally use a mic because I had social anxiety, and also Valorant gamers are really weird with females. I had met this guy who was pretty chill. He invited me to queue up with his friends, one guy, one girl, and I accepted. His friend was super sweet and funny, and we got along pretty well. I decided to add him as a friend. We started playing some matches from time to time and exchanged discords. We started talking more and more, and I did eventually get attached. I could tell that he was really into me. He would praise and text me a lot. A few months passed. We then exchanged Instagrams and started DMing each other. Throughout all of this, we hadn't established if we were friends or more. We would flirt occasionally, but it wouldn't go further than that. One day, he asked me for my Snapchat. I agreed, even though I thought it was sort of suspicious. Men on Snapchat? I know where that leads. But I didn't really mind it, since I did kind of like him. Things did turn sexual after a few days, and he would send me pictures and videos. I didn't send anything back, but I would entertain it. Mistake number 1. Maybe 6 months, a year after we initially met, so end of 2023, I was 15 and told him I didn't want anything serious, no relationships, but we could be friends with benefits. He enthusiastically agreed, and I ended up sending him pictures. Mistake number 2. I really thought I was safe because it was on Snapchat. You can see if they screenshot. A few weeks passed and I realized I had never seen his face, and I knew almost nothing about him. I started asking more about him. Found out that his name was Joshua, and he lives in Florida. He showed me his face. He has multiple mental illnesses and has had trouble with the police before. I realized how deep in shit I was and started texting him less and less, which infuriated him. At some point, I decided to officially cut him off. Tried to do it as politely as I could and blocked him. I thought that was it. In the beginning of 2024, I received a text from my sister. "Hey, who's Josh?" I felt my knees weaken and my stomach drop. I asked her why, and she told me that she would tell me when she gets home. When she finally arrived, I was waiting in the kitchen for her, and she just gave me this look. I started crying and she hugged me. He sent her my pictures and threatened to leak them. I had no choice but to talk about it with my mom, and she told me we should go to the police. I agreed and went to the police station, where they told me they would send officers at my house and they would take my phone and talk to me and my sister. It kind of dawned on me that this was really serious, and I got scared. I blacked out. Mistake number 3. Maybe a month or 2 later, Josh's brother texted me asking me to unblock him. We texted a bit, and he told me that Josh would often sell nudes to pedos on Telegram. I realized how deep in shit I was, but I was too scared to speak up. I really should have. Josh texted my friend's boyfriend, no idea how he found him, and started telling him how I was horrible and asking if he wanted my nudes. A few months later, he texted my then boyfriend telling him the same thing, but threatening to send my nudes if I wouldn't talk to him. I unblocked him. Mistake number 4. I didn't lead him on. I told him to back off and leave me alone, that I'd go to the cops. He told me, and I quote, "That would just show me how much you love me." I obviously reblocked him. I since then every few months get a Snapchat or Instagram request from him. I would sometimes accept it and tell him to back off, telling him I don't love him. I tried to find out his last name, and I remember his brother that texted me. I texted him, asking him for Josh's last name. He denied knowing me and knowing Josh. I sent him screenshots of our conversation a few months earlier, talking about me and him, and he ignored me. I'm wondering if there's anything I can do. I feel like I can't escape him wherever I go. I've turned most of my accounts private because of him, and I have trouble trusting people now. I feel like I'm always just waiting for him to reappear. I lived in a managed complex that has 2 buildings. The main one with a lobby, mailroom, amenities, etc. And the second one, which I currently live in. On Sunday night, I had a DoorDash delivery dropped off. I always tell them they can drop my orders off at the secondary entrance in my building so that I don't have to walk across over to the main building, but I don't think they ever read my notes. No worries. I read the notification from DoorDash and saw it got delivered to the lobby in the main building around 11 p.m. I made my way over, and I noticed the Dasher even left me a note saying there was a suspicious man in the lobby and that he was worried he might take my food. I figured he said that because he was waiting until I got there. When I came down, there really was a guy sitting there on his phone, but carefully watching my food. He saw me approach and said, "You're here." To which I responded, "Thanks for waiting," thinking it must be my DoorDasher. I pick up my order and start to turn around, and he also got up, except he started heading in the direction of the elevators, not the exit. He starts chatting. "I actually live in this building. My name is Ryan, and I live in building number 3. What's your name?" I gave him a fake name and cut the conversation short. The pieces came together in my head. This wasn't the DoorDasher. It was the suspicious man pretending to be a DoorDasher who had even waited for me to come down as though he made my delivery. You can either use the elevators in the main building to go to the 4th floor and transfer to the secondary building, or you can cut across the garage in the main building to the second building. I noticed the key fob in his hand and waited for him to click the elevator and step inside. When I gathered he was taking the elevator, and I knew I definitely didn't want to share an elevator with him because he would know where I lived, I decided that I would take a shortcut through the garage. It's a straight line, maybe about a 2-minute walk to the other side. After he stepped on the elevator, I walked through both sets of doors into the garage. My senses heightened. Halfway through, I decided to look behind me to verify I was alone, only to see his body in the doorway. He hadn't taken the elevator. He was following me. I booked it, heart racing, through the garage doors. I started jamming the elevator button, hoping it would come quickly, but I could hear that the elevator was still on its way down. In the split second, I tried to think if I would be strong enough to hold down the door with the weight of my body if it came pushing through, but that would mean we would be stuck in the same area in the garage with probably little to no cameras, witnesses, or any cell service. I was running out of time. I eyed the stairwell and carried my food, booked it into 2 steps at a time, up 2 floors. I was now on the 4th floor, which is normally the floor you would transfer to get to the other building. Although I was now in the secondary building, I was worried that if he indeed was still following me, he would know which building I lived in. I needed to go back to the main building. If he is still behind me, I would know for sure that he was following me because we just made a circle. From the corner of my eye in the distance, I could see someone taking their trash out from the reflection of the door. At 11 p.m., this was the first person I had seen, and I needed to be next to anyone. I cut through the courtyard, through the conservatory, and into the hallway of the 4th floor in the main building. Just as I stopped to catch my breath, he burst through the conservatory door and caught up with me, huffing and puffing. He accused me of stealing his DoorDash, yelling, got in my face and told me that I could be evicted and sent to prison. I couldn't even look at him in his eyes for longer than 3 seconds, but he looked bewildered. At this point, the person that was taking the trash out to the chute was nowhere to be seen, and this man kept coming closer. Me backing up, him inching closer. I tried talking loudly, hoping that if anything happened, the residents in the units behind me could hear. He continued to raise his voice, claiming that 119 number on the receipt stapled outside the bag was the real person's apartment number and that I had stolen from them. Taking a look, 119 was in fact the order number, not the apartment number, but he was convinced it was someone's apartment number. For a lot of reasons, this logic didn't make sense. Even if I was taking someone else's order, he was going to follow me to my apartment to verify where I lived, which is scary, and ensure that my apartment matched the number, which he assumed the apartment number was 119. He was able to catch up to me relatively quickly, considering I was sprinting and out of breath. This means he was deliberately following and chasing me down, which as a man, circumstances aside, but especially for stolen food, I'm not sure why you would ever willingly chase a woman by herself at night, knowing how this would look for him. He had to have studied the order and receipts because he had to have close proximity to the receipt to see the fading ink that read 119. It was never about the order, because why did he pretend to go to the elevator in the beginning only to chase me across 2 buildings for an order when he didn't even know which apartment number I was going to? And it definitely dawned on him that up to that point, we were the only people around. As I was standing there, him inching near me and poking at the receipt, I heard someone coming through the hallway in the distance. He clicked the elevator button, continuing his threats, and I didn't even finish waiting for him to get on the elevator. I sprinted through the conservatory, through the courtyard, and back to my building, taking the elevator up to my floor. I got to my apartment paralyzed and shaking. I was so terrified that my breathing got labored and raspy. I don't even have asthma, but I could barely catch my breath for minutes, grasping onto anything I could so that I could feel grounded and not choke from the lack of air. I'll never forget that moment I looked back in that garage and saw his body in the doorframe. I wrote a long, detailed email to management with screenshots from the DoorDash and exact accounts and locations of where everything happened so that they could collaborate my accounts with their camera footage. It's now been 4 days, and I'm awoken every morning by my heart racing, hot flashes, and paranoia with every drop of a sound. This is a new kind of anxiety I've never felt before, and my days are clouded with fear of bumping into him in the common spaces, and how to plan my days with the highest likelihood of avoiding him, and how to strategically order and pick up my mail where I can know that I won't have to see him. I don't know if these extreme symptoms are normal after this experience, considering I know a lot of women who have had more frightening, violent encounters with strangers that involve more than what just happened to me that night. But this has been consuming me for the past few days. I feel unsafe in my own building. Edit. Everything that's happened since that morning. My management and maintenance, 2 men came knocking on my door. Of course, I was already frazzled from the events of that night, and although I opened the door, they could see that I was visibly shaking. They came to apologize about the events, saying they had seen the footage and it was scary. I needed to file a police report immediately. The property manager was kind, saying he would sit and call the police with me, so I wouldn't have to do it alone. I asked if they knew the resident and if they were aware. He said they knew who it was, and this wasn't the first time he's been reported for bothering a resident. My stomach sank. I quickly got ready and met the property manager downstairs outside our building, and we made the call together. After I gave my account, the property manager chimed in with his accounts of what happened. I was the 4th or 5th female that he harassed. He has harassed women in the complex before, but never followed them at night. The property manager has managed multiple properties before, but he's never seen a resident following another resident like this before. He usually finds a woman by herself, kind of hones in on them. He does not approach men, and he doesn't approach women when they are with men. The people who live on his floor have complained numerous times that he harasses them. He's been arrested for harassing women. He's been sent to the hospital before for his mental health issues. He was most recently booked and released 2 weeks ago, and management wasn't aware that he was back. The responder on the other line noted that this was quite severe, so they sent an officer to the scene to collect an official report. By this point, as we were talking, I learned the resident's full name, birthday, unit number he lives in, when he moved in. It's been less than a half year, so assuming he has a 12-month lease, he still has a ways to go. The officer asked me if I could remember if he had a tool or weapon in his hands, but I said I couldn't remember, and not that I knew of. I said there was camera footage, so couldn't we check to see if he did? But the officer said, even if I couldn't remember and it turns out the perpetrator did in fact have a weapon, I couldn't go back on my word and say that there was a weapon or I felt threatened. I was stunned. I told the officer, but there's evidence of him following me, a woman alone, as well as threatening me across 2 buildings, one of which he had no business being in. The officer asked if he used the words, "I will kill you" or "I will shoot you." I said no, but he was still threatening me. The officer said, unfortunately, that only qualifies as being a nuisance, but being a nuisance isn't against the law or grounds for arrest. My heart dropped. On top of that, my property manager said he's been trying to evict him, but there isn't enough evidence, and eviction is a long process. There was nothing we could do. The officer gave me his card with my case number, informing me I should call him if he ever approached me again or I felt unsafe. I went back to my apartment stunned, trying to figure out my next steps. I decided not to leave my apartment again out of safety, but ordered additional self-defense items, including an apartment doorbell camera, because he had been close enough to my receipt to see the order number. The receipt also had my name. I was worried he would put 2 and 2 together, type my name in the directory outside our building, and figure out my unit number. I couldn't risk running into him again, so I had to stay locked up until my camera arrived. Given the information I had about him now, I decided to do my own research and find his public records. To my surprise, I learned that he actually had 6 court cases since 2018. And the most recent court record was from August 2024. His cases have been for stalking, harassment, restraining orders, multiple reissued anti-harassment protection orders, domestic violence, and attempting to get him to surrender his firearms, to which he refused. So he still owns his guns. Different women have attempted to serve him protection orders multiple times but failed, because he either tried to dodge it, never showed up to court, or he's been hard to get a hold of. I couldn't believe it. This man was able to freely move about the common spaces in our complex, and management has never mentioned anything to the residents, nor regarded our safety. Now I knew this was more than just an annoying neighbor, but rather someone who could be dangerous. I was dealing with a man with unresolved mental issues, who may still be in possession of multiple firearms, who is angry with me. Given his history of professional stalking, I was worried if he saw me too soon again, he would remember our encounter and fixate on me, and possibly escalate it. A few days passed and I hadn't left my building, but I noted that my camera had arrived, so I was trying to arrange how I could get to the mailroom, which was in the building he lives in, and on the floor he's on. I asked management for the footage of our encounter, and after 2 days of dragging on the request, they finally sent me clips of our encounters in different areas. In one of the videos, you could see he followed me into the garage a bit after I had already gone in, after he supposedly pretended to take the elevator. In the clip that freaks me out the most, you could see him enter the garage elevator lobby, click the elevator button, frantically pace around back and forth, before I realized I'm running out of time and ran through the stairwell. A few minutes later, you could see him come in, look at all the pressed elevator buttons, then deduce I must have taken the stairwell before following suit. If anything, this showed intent. Oddly enough, the footage when he caught up to me and poked the receipt on the bag was missing, but management sent the footage after when I was running back to my building. Anyway, a few days later around 6 p.m., I was trying to figure out how to pick up my mail. I have a married friend who lives in his building 3 floors above him and had no idea about any of this, so I asked if she would be comfortable meeting me on the 4th floor. Deep breaths. I got to the end of the hallway, my friend on the phone the whole time, and I opened the door to the courtyard. Hypervigilant, I looked across and saw the man there. I squinted. It couldn't be. It was indeed him, standing in the conservatory. He locked eyes with me, started mouthing things, smiling, then yelling. I began shaking, uncontrollably crying, and quickly ran back into my building. Now we knew for sure I lived in the 2nd building. My friend was in the hallway behind me, so she witnessed everything as he was yelling directly at me. She wasn't with her husband either, but he had locked eyes with me and was angry now. There were some people in the hallway frantically asking if I was okay, but I couldn't speak. My friend, still on the line, told me to go back to my apartment, that she would meet me there with her husband. My friend and her husband came up a few moments later, staying with me as I frantically packed my bag. We decided it wasn't safe for me to be alone in my apartment, so I reached out to another friend who lives somewhere else in the city, so I could crash at her place. My friend and her husband escorted me through the hallway, me physically breaking down as we neared the elevators, but eventually leading me to my other friend's car. As I write this edit, I am in the living room of her apartment for the 3rd day, figuring out my next moves. On my first day at my friend's house, I wrote management an email explaining the incident with the resident again. This is my 2nd day with no response from them still. My friend went to management with her husband to report the incident since she was witness to him yelling, so it could add to their complaints. She said management was aware of me and my complaints, but they couldn't do anything because he's protected under the Fair Housing Act. Management cannot deny housing to someone due to their disability, which includes mental illness. For context, most buildings in the city have MFTE units, basically reduced rent apartments that were reserved as part of an affordable housing program in my city. From what I can understand, people can qualify for MFTE housing based on their income, and sometimes it's combined with disability projections, which is likely how he's able to stay here. So it seems my unit is worried if they evict him, he might be able to sue them. I don't have a male partner, which seems to be the only deterrent from the resident, so my sister and her husband are trying to figure out when they can fly in and help me pack up my place so I can get out of there. I'm devastated because it's a beautiful complex with incredible amenities, gorgeous interior, and pretty new. But all that means nothing when my safety is at risk. I have no plans, but I can't get back to my place until I have protection at all times in the building. I haven't told many people this story because it's pretty upsetting. Bear in mind that I look younger. Most people said at the time 10 years younger, and keep in mind this man is older. Probably mid-50s. When I was 24 years old, I had a route that I took every day for work, where a man selling newspapers for $1 on the side of the road. One day I decided to give him some money because he seemed in need. I was aware enough to understand and to be cautious of getting too close or familiar with people. But it was only $1, so in my head I didn't overthink it. Immediately, this guy hits on me, telling me I'm so fine and asks me if he could take me out for lunch. I laugh it off and tell him I'm working, so I can't, but he insists and asks when I'm getting off work. I idiotically said 4 p.m. I don't know why I was so naive at this age, but I digress. He said he'd love to take me out for dinner. At that moment, I drove off because the light changed to green. I only saw this guy 2 more times, but he wasn't able to say anything or stop my car because the light was always green when I drove up. I didn't acknowledge him because I realized in hindsight, after he hit on me, I shouldn't have even entertained it. Anyways, I was walking into a store where he usually sets up shop next to the light. I didn't see him in his usual spot, and I just walked into the store to do some shopping, then came out about 10 minutes later. He was waiting for me at my car. So now I'm thoroughly creeped out because I didn't even see him and he's suddenly at my car. He knew my car from that one encounter. He wouldn't let me pass to get to the driver's seat, all while he's hitting on me again, asking if I wanted to go to dinner this time. I tell him sorry, but no, I'm not really trying to date anyone right now because I'm focused on work. Surprisingly, backed off a bit, but said, "Don't tell your dad about me. I don't want to get in trouble," and walked off. While I was still creeped out, nothing bad really happened, and I didn't see him again in his usual spot for about 2 weeks, so I didn't think much of it anymore. Then, I see him on the news. He was arrested for SA of an underage girl. Then they found out he was also violating his parole by being within 2,000 feet of a school. He had done this before. The light I drove by every day was right across from a middle school. This freak assaulted the girl a day after he talked to me in the parking lot. That's why I didn't see him for 2 weeks. He took her to a restaurant for lunch, then assaulted her in the bathroom there. He was targeting me because he thought I was underage. That poor actual underage girl. I don't understand how he wasn't permanently in prison and yet was on parole.